What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Del Rey. We are getting so close to the Combine, but we're not there yet. So this is pre-Combine mock draft number 2. And this time I did include trades, as has been requested, specifically a trade back to garner the Packers some additional assets. The reason why I talk so much about the Combine is, as we all know, so much is determined at the Combine because we actually find out so many more of these guys' measurements, so many more of their athletic testing numbers, which for the Green Bay Packers happen to matter a whole lot. So the Packers board really does start to get built from the Combine. One quick bit of news about the Combine is last year it was so just widely panicked about, reported, dramatized that Gutekunst was going to the Combine and LaFleur for the first time was going to stay home. Well, they're doing that again this year, and it's not a drama-filled piece of gossip. It's just that Goot's going. LaFleur's not. And Goot is going to speak at a podium next week, so we're going to get to hear from him. But LaFleur potentially just opting to stay back with his new defensive coordinator. The guy who, by all accounts, won the heart of Packer fans everywhere following his press conference. If you haven't seen his press conference, I totally would encourage you to do so because it's easy to see why he got the job ultimately. So let's head into this mock draft. A couple of ground rules that I just want to get out of the way right away. I utilized PFF's mock draft simulator. And frankly, they've updated a lot of their rankings over the course of the last week, some of which I agree with. Some I don't know just how real they are because there's a few players that slid pretty far back. And I don't know as if that's actually going to match reality or not. So, but nonetheless, that is the simulator that I used. For the trades, I did not trust PFF. I think that their trading system is very forgiving in their mock draft simulator. Instead, I used Rich Hill's trade chart. So both of the trades that I did pull off are within 10 points, which makes it a pretty acceptable trade. Other than that, of course, I did heavily keep in mind the Packers' thresholds, their standards. This is basically what I would do given what happens on the board, but basing it on what the Packers have historically done, what they would do, what they value, what their parameters are, etc., etc. So with all of that in mind, let's actually get to the mock draft. For the trades, I did want to show this to you separately. These are the two trades that I pulled off. First off, with the New England Patriots, Packers falling back a little bit. This is what was requested. I want to say a quick word about this too. It's entirely possible that the Packers move up in this draft. Brian Gutekunst showed that before. If he falls in love with a guy and he's got the capital to do it, he will move up to get a guy. It's also been pointed out quite a lot that the meat of this draft could be in rounds 2 and 3. It's got some top-end talent, but really the true meat where you can get some values in rounds 2 and 3. So what's been requested is a fallback here. So the Packers trade with the New England Patriots, pick 25, their first rounder, goes to the Patriots for the Patriots' second rounder, pick 34, and then their third rounder, pick 68. And of course, what the Patriots did then with pick 25 was pick Jaden Daniels. So that does seem smart for their franchise, but does fall the Packers back in the second round. Then the other trade that I pulled off was with the Atlanta Falcons. Packers actually moved up in that trade. I think you're going to see why in just a little bit. But the Falcons gave them pick 79, the Packers giving up pick 88, and then their round 5 projected compensatory selection, pick 168. It's not official they're going to have 168 yet. It's just projected, but there you go. 88, 168, 479. That leaves the Packers in this mock draft with 34, 41, 57, 68, 88, and 91. So let's hop to it. With the 34th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Ennis Rakestraw Jr., cornerback from Missouri. Look, he's 6 feet tall. That meets their height requirement. And I'm just going to get this out in front right away. Right now, per what he's listed on PFF, is he heavy enough? No, they list him at about 188 pounds. It's been reported, or Daniel Jeremiah has said, that they're hoping by the combine that he could get up to 195. So, like, frankly, go to Culver's. Doesn't seem like it should be that tough. But basically here, the Packers do like their cornerbacks to be 200 pounds, a little over 200 pounds, but they are willing to make exceptions down to the mid 190s for players that they really like. Example being Jair Alexander. And they may absolutely fall in love with Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Pro Football Network calls him a route eraser and one of the best man coverage cornerbacks in the entire draft. He displays explosive burst in close range to close as the ball is incoming for the receiver. And he's got these really long arms that do keep everything, including the receivers, within reach more than most cornerbacks. A drawback, though, is these long limbs, this wiry frame, does at times get him outmatched against more physical receivers, especially in the run game. But if you watch him play, one word that always comes to mind for me is feisty. Constantly getting his hands on opposing receivers, and the man's got swagger for days. In his highlight reel, announcers have said before that the coaching staff reveres him as the hype man of the Missouri defense. Can you just imagine Rakestraw, Jair, Valentine, receivers are just going to straight up be annoyed. In the tackling department, he's regarded as capable, willing, but there are some concerns about his open field tackling and whether he can be consistent in that area. But even in the senior season alone, he got over 30 tackles, 10 stops. And as much as open field was listed as a concern by several different draft nicks, the numbers actually don't show that big of a problem, because overall he's got an average missed tackle rate of under 10% over the last 2 years. And if you're wondering about positional versatility, he's got that too. He's logged at least 100 snaps in the slot both of the last 2 years as well. Something that the Packers could certainly use, no doubt about it. And I'm not suggesting that they spend pick 34 on a slot corner. But no, this is a guy who's versatile enough to do both. So is he the perfect prospect? No. As I mentioned earlier, according to several different film reviews, large receivers have the ability to pretty much take him out of the run game. And he does have a torn ACL in his injury history. And there may be some concern. I've read some that there's a little bit of concern about his overall top end speed, but certainly not his quick burst. So it's going to be interesting to see how he tests, see if that becomes problematic. I don't think it's going to fall into the range of him being outside of Green Bay's thresholds in terms of like a 40 time. He seems, at least watching him, to still have plenty of speed to keep up. Maybe just not against like the high flyers. But overall, feisty, adept tackler, one of the best man coverage prospects in this draft. That kind of seems like the kind of thing the new defense could kind of use. And it's the type of corner that even when the defense didn't need those kinds of guys, Brian Gutekunst still loves to pick. Up next with the 41st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Chop Robinson, edge from Penn State. Now, here is the athlete for Brian Gutekunst. 6'3", 250 pounds. Admittedly, a little under, again, what the Packers look for. Generally, they look like 265 on the edge, but they've been 3'4" for a real long time. Like, maybe it will lighten a little with 4'3" end, although I tend to doubt it still. Robinson seems close enough that it may still pass. But one thing, his athleticism, it just leaps off the frame. He's a pass rushing extraordinaire from Penn State. He's got pass rush grades from PFF over 92 in each of the last 2 seasons. He's racked up 74 pressures, 8 sacks. Weird, tackling was a bit of concern in 2022 with a rate of over 25% in terms of missed tackle rate, but he made massive strides in that department over this last year, and he got it all the way down to 7%. His true average probably falls somewhere in the middle. The Draft Network refers to Chop as a high-activity pass rusher with an explosive first step. And as for the downside, this is not a comp. I don't want that to get misconstrued. I'm not comping him. What I'm saying is that there are some traits, some tendencies that do sound awfully familiar. So as for the downside, he's very Rashawn Gary-like in the not-so-great ways, meaning in the run game, he often loses contain as he's trying to use his athleticism to go make a play. In the pass rush area, he tries to use explosion, aggression, athleticism, not necessarily tactical precision, and secondary moves to get through more athletic tackles. But the strength, the motor, being high activity, they all also scream Rashawn Gary in the good ways too. Again, not a comp, just similar traits. So is he Rashawn Gary? No, he's not quite that caliber. But similarities are there. And frankly, if he goes and tests like some people expect him to, like I'm not kidding, this guy may be one of the most athletic guys in the entire draft. He's on Bruce Feldman's freak list. If he can go to the combine and test like a lot of people are expecting him to, he may not be living in the second round in many more mocks. Now, with another second round selection, this one being the 57th pick in the NFL draft, the Green Bay Packers select Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker from Texas A&M. NFL Draft Butters refers to Cooper as the archetype of the modern NFL linebacker. Yeah, the Packers could use one of them nowadays. He's got the speed necessary to cover tight ends or running backs in the seam. He's got the quick twitch instincts to fill in gaps in the run game. He is considered probably best in a Will or Mike role of a base 4-3, but he also could be a massive chess piece, a massive disruptor in 4-2-5 settings. Another knock, he's lean. He can get bogged down by beefy offensive linemen. So in order for him to be as disruptive as possible, he does have to get put in a position where he's not going up against these bulky dudes. Thus, the ideal 4-3 linebacker, 4-2-5 setup, not really being an edge rusher, despite him having a little bit of that skill set. Get him away from the offensive line. Let him spy, cover, or even blitz, considering that he logged nearly 10 sacks last season. And you could be looking at an impact player sooner rather than later. The only real question that I have with Cooper, and I know for a lot of people, he is off-ball linebacker number 1 in this draft, and rightfully so. He's highly dynamic, highly athletic, does his job incredibly well. But I guess my question is, and I mocked him, so I really didn't have to go ahead, but like, if the Packers, like, let's just take their base 4-3, right? Let's say that they do move on from Devondre Campbell and they draft Cooper. So now you've got McDuffie, Cooper, and Quay as your 3 starting linebackers. In your base 4-3, who plays Sam? Sam being strong side, Will being weak side, and Mike being middle. Who plays Sam out of them? Because it kind of sounds like 3 linebackers that are all Mikes or Wills. Or because 4-2-5 is probably going to be their real true base anyway, does it really even matter? Are the Packers going to care? Do they just want 3 dynamic guys back there who can cover, who have some blitz versatility, etc.? So something to consider as well. Plus, Cooper, even though with a little bit lighter of a frame, could maybe be that Viper position, if it ever comes into fruition. We'll just have to see. But and I'll say this too, like I was debating saying this or not because it's draft season. Everyone's got something, right? Rumor has it, according to a few different Packer draft nicks, maybe most vocal about it would be Ross Uglum. The Packers do seem quite enamored with Edgerrin Cooper. So again, it's that season. Take it for what you will. With the 68th pick in the NFL draft, the Green Bay Packers select Cameron Kitchen, safety from Miami. I said earlier the PFF's update feels a little bit weird. And maybe it's because Packers bias is like we're all staring at safeties all day, every day. But it really feels like Kitchens shouldn't be here this late at pick 68. I mean, he's considered by some to be the best overall safety prospect in this draft. Considered by even more people to assuredly be the best center fielder style safety in this class. He's racked up 11 picks over the last 2 years and displays the range to be that eraser that Hafley is looking for in the newly crowned post safety position. If you haven't watched Hafley's press conference yet, post safety, center fielder, free safety, in this style defense, it's all basically the same thing. It's the guy who goes pretty far back, but drops into zone, and then makes sure that he makes up for whichever man and man coverage gets beat. Like that's a post safety, just in case you were wondering. In the case of Kitchens, he's fast. He's a natural safety. He's got probably the best ball skills in this entire draft. There are some drawbacks. His 2022 was dynamite. He was even exemplary in coverage. Then 2023 just wasn't as strong. A couple bad habits kind of developed in his game. What's been referred to on a couple different sites as lackadaisical technique or overly aggressive angles in the run game, according to NFL Draft Buzz. His completion percentage allowed also jumped from 57% in 2022 to 82% completion allowed in 2023. And I will say, another knock on him that a lot of people really like to say is he's got a reputation as not an ideal tackler. But at least statistically, I got to say that doesn't really bear out. 2022, he was 19%. 2023, he actually got better, 13% this last year, which is more than acceptable for a safety. And I will say, too, Goot's shown that he's more than willing to look at a player's entire collegiate career. Look at Exhibit A, Dontavian Wicks. If Goot believes that looking at an entire career can get him a great value to plug a hole, he's not going to be afraid to do it. And if Kitchens doesn't test well or slides in the draft or teams hold last year get him, and Kitchens is somehow available in this range, they might be considering him in the second round. If he's sitting here at this point, yeah, could be a very, very smart move for Green Bay. By the way, I will say, I do think Green Bay is going to add a free agent safety too, so this isn't necessarily the end-all be-all, but yeah, this could be a smart way to fill a hole. Now, with the 79th pick in the NFL draft, part of that trade with the Atlanta Falcons earlier, the Green Bay Packers selected Jalen Wright, running back from Tennessee. 5'11", 210 pounds, but man, I got to tell you, that's average size for a running back, but the speed is not so average. That man can go. He's believed to have home run potential with every single carry. But, even beyond the speed, what a lot of people consider to be one of his best traits is his patience. Big Blue View, a Giants website that performs film reviews, they describe an elite timing that actually allows his offensive line to get to their gaps. He's patient as a runner. And the proof's in the numbers. Wright last year ran for over 1,000 yards with an average carry of 7.4 yards per attempt. He also improved in the passing game this year, catching 22 passes for 141 yards on only 25 targets. Yeah, 22 catches, 25 targets. That ain't too shabby. Given the receiving and the speed, I don't want to offer the impression, though, that he's just some scat back. He's not. He got 592 yards after contact this year, including over 4 contact yards per carry. And I will say there's 2 more things that the Packers are going to absolutely adore about Jalen Wright. One is he's not 21 years old yet. Dude's still 20. They're going to like that. And one of the best traits that he's got compared to his peers, yeah, he's lightning quick, good through contact, catches the ball well, does the job of running back really well. Green Bay is going to love him for his pass pro. On 58 pass blocking reps this year, he logged an efficiency rating of over 97, and he didn't give up a single sack. Plus, watching him in pass pro, it's very reminiscent of like an Aaron Jones, in that, especially against Dallas, where Wright is willing to step into the block, not allow some pass rusher just to come at him. No, Wright steps into the block. He's willing, he's able. So many collegiate backs don't do it at the level that he is. I'm not making him sound like an expert or like the best ever, but he's well ahead of most of his peers, and the Packers are going to love that, especially potentially looking at a guy who could take over the run game for Aaron Jones in the future. Last pick in this draft does go with number 91 in the draft pick, Mason McCormick from South Dakota State. So if you happen to look up Mason McCormick, let's get the obvious out of the way. Dude's old. He spent 6 years in school, started over 70 collegiate games. So at least in his case, age does equal experience. And he's a mountain of a guard weighing in 315 pounds, and that's what's listed, who works to establish initial control with a strong punch and driving legs. But the reason why that initial control is a real big deal, it's because if he doesn't get initial control, this is his struggle spot. If he doesn't get initial control on a high-activity pass rusher like Chop Robinson was referred to as earlier, then he may get beat. But if he gets you in his control, you're probably cooked. Another downer in his game is he's very inconsistent with his pulling technique. It's believed that it could be because of a lack of speed. He just doesn't have the speed to get around some of the pulling assignments they asked him to do. But ultimately, they still could be a good match for Green Bay. Because one thing that they're going to love about him, no matter what, man plays to the whistle. Every whistle, every time. And if you feel as though the Packers could use some kind of road grading mauler in their interior line, McCormick could be for you. And all that experience also, I'm just going to throw this in as a side note, could mean that he could walk in and perhaps challenge Sean Ryan for a job right off the bat. So there you have it. Now, just to recap here, the picks, round 2, 34, Anna Straw Jr., 241, Chop Robinson, 257, Andrew Cooper, 368, Cameron Kitchens, 379, I'm sorry, it's wrong on the graphic there, that would be Jalen Wright, and then 391, Mason McCormick. So from this draft, the Packers got a corner with a slot versatility, an edge, an off-ball linebacker, perhaps the best center fielding safety in the draft, a running back who might be the future of the position, and an interior offensive lineman. Doesn't seem too shabby. One thing we can say for sure is that the Green Bay Packers, with the number of assets that they have, whether they pull off trades to get more assets or not, they are in a good position to get into this draft and plug some holes. Thanks so much for checking out this mock draft. On Monday, I'll be back. I don't know what the topic is yet. We'll see if some news develops over the weekend, but for sure, I'll be back on Monday. And then Wednesday of next week, a live Q&A at 4 o'clock Lambeau time. It's going to be the last Q&A for a little bit. As many of you know, I am going to be out for a stretch of time starting next week, Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining me here on Lombardi Time Brews. Do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a great weekend coming up ahead of you. Thanks so much for joining me. And as always, go Pack, go.